It's after, so we can start the meeting. So we'll call it to order. And would Stephen, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I'd be happy to, sir. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
And to the
republic
for
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless our troops. In the words of Anthony. Okay. So the stenographer is on the phone. Do you need any input from any people here, or you've got the roll call pretty much done? Telesco? All right. Well,
They're muted.
yeah, I know, I see that. Telesco. Well, let's go under the assumption that they've got the roll call because it's listed on the list of participants, which are at 19 right now.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the last meeting it was discussed that we would have an introduction as we normally did when we were in person.
Sure. And then
Maybe
let's-
call out the first names.
well, I'll start with myself because I'm looking at the screen the way it's put here. It's I'm John Romano, Chairman of the Harbor Commission. Pinto,
John Pinto, Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, Application Review Chair.
Steve,
Steve Bardish, Norwalk Shellfish Commission, Mayor's Water Quality Committee, Harbor Superintendent, 5 Mile River.
Tom,
Dennis Santella, Harbor Commission.
Tom, Ryder. You're muted, Tom. All right, Norm,
Norm Edwards, manager, Waiting Yacht Club.
Chris McDonald,
Okay, good evening, Chris McDonald, Norwalk Harbor Management Commission.
Alan Kibbe,
Alan Kibbe, Norwalk Harbor Management Commissioner, Treasurer.
John Igneri,
Waiting Yacht Club Board.
Laurie Jones,
Lori Jones, Norwalk Harbor Commission.
Joseph Schneiderline,
Joe Schnurline, Mayor's Water Quality Committee Chairman.
John Crespo. John, you're muted, John.
John
John,
Crespo, Norwalk Harbor Commission.
Anthony Carr. Anthony, you're muted too. But
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize about that. I'm actually in transit, which is why my camera's off. But Anthony
Okay.
Carr, Chief of Operations and Public Works.
Jeff Mangles. Jeff, are you there? I see you on the screen, but maybe you're muted. I'm not sure. Seems like you're on your telephone. And Michelle. Michelle, why don't-
Michelle Andrewski, Planning and Zoning Staff Person for the Harbor Commission.
yeah, is
Jeff Stedman around.
and Vanessa, you're back?
I am, I'm sorry. Vanessa Valadares, Principal Engineer, City of Norwalk.
Okay,
And Jeff
I don't-
Stedman.
yeah, it's fine, but I don't see him on here.
He's there.
Well,
Check under my name.
I'm with John,
Okay, Jeff Stedman,
Yeah, he has a trouble with his computer, and so we're sharing his screen.
fine. All right, Jeff, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Jeff Stedman, Harbor Commission Consultant.
Okay, so let's get to, did I get everybody?
Well, you have
All right.
20, you have 20 participants, John. Actually, 21 participants.
Right,
All right.
counting Telesco, but they haven't
Right.
spoken. So why don't I turn the meeting over to you for application review, John, please?
All right, no, thank you very much. Yeah, well, this evening, I've asked Vanessa and Anthony Carr to present the work that was submitted to us about 3 years ago regarding the placement and positioning of 2 high-tension wires owned by Eversource underneath Norwalk Harbor. The initiation point is going to be at the Norwalk Police Station, going underneath Elizabeth Street, and then tunneling under Norwalk, on the Norwalk Harbor, coming up at the Visitors Dock area and Vets Park. And I've asked Vanessa and Anthony to come back and discuss the renovation that was issued by Eversource. Not sure if plans have actually been submitted, but Eversource had discussed a renovation or a renewal of their original application to the city with regard to the placement of those transmission lines, rather than going underneath the Visitors Dock that was originally proposed, going to the north of the Visitors Dock. And I've asked Vanessa to come back and explain what Eversource's plans happen to be. So
All right,
Vanessa,
John, you should point out that this new iteration is very close to a recommendation that we initially made to them with other conditions and wants and asks other than what they're proposing now.
oh, that's correct. That's correct.
All right, so why don't you guys make your presentation, please?
Vanessa, Vanessa, do you want to,
So,
you can share the screen?
yes,
think
I'll
Michelle
share
did it.
my screen now. Can you guys see the map?
It's a bold.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come in front of the commission so we can explain what is this new proposed route that Eversource has submitted to the city. Again, there were many interactions of the route in this past probably 5 years that we have been working with Eversource. And I think that this last one that they showed to us a couple of months ago is to really minimize all the impact and also be able, they were very flexible and try to understand our needs and accommodate what was some of our concerns. So I'm gonna go through the route and explain what is the route as it is now. I just wanna let you guys know, this is not the final design, so it's a very good concept plan that they already started some engineering on it, but they haven't finalized because the main thing that what went in front of the DPW committee last week was that they need to get a land use agreement for the two parcels that would be affected by this route. So one would be the police headquarters and the other would be Vets Park. So I'm gonna go through the route overall, and then if you guys need, I can zoom in some of the areas. So as Mr. Pinto explained, for those that do not know, there are some high tension transmission lines that go over the Walk Bridge, and Eversource was directed by Connecticut DOT to remove those transmission lines so the bridge can be replaced. So the option that the Common Council would prefer that they approve a couple of years ago was to be able to go under the river instead of having overhang transmission line through South Norwalk. So as I mentioned before, there were a couple of routes that they tried to evaluate, and then there were some concerns from the city, some also physical concerns that they found when they were engineering. And this is the latest and the final one that they presented to us. So the route starts right here. This is the police headquarters. Those are the tracks. Those red dots are the electrical monopoles where they're gonna kind of get it to the side of the tracks here, and then they're gonna start going underground. So this is really an open trench excavation. Starting at the police headquarters parking lot, going through the driveway, crossing South Main Street and going all the way through Elizabeth Street. When they get to Elizabeth Street, they're gonna cross Water Street, and that's when the transition will start from open trench excavation to horizontal drilling. Right here, you can see two, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. So right here are the two vaults, those two rectangles here is where the horizontal drilling would start. So then they start going under, they're gonna cross under the river, and then they're gonna continue and only gonna come up out of Vets Park on Route 136. And as you can see here through the docks, they are now aiming north of the docks, and the only area that they are really getting to the park is a little slice here, but again, this is a horizontal drilling. There is no open trench excavation through the park. And then close to the entrance of the park, but already outside Vets Park is where the two faults will be for the transition from horizontal drilling to again open trench excavation. So that open trench excavation will continue through Route 136. Let me just zoom out a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. Oops. So they will continue through here, and then again, they're gonna get the monopoles and then cross there. So they're diverting this portion of the transmission line. Let me try to zoom in some of the areas here so you can see a little bit more. So again, here is the parking lot. This hatch area is the area that is where the easement will be taken from the city in relation to this parcel. And then when you go to Vets Park, the area here is this hatch area is a combination of the easement area that they're gonna need for construction, because there will be like some staging area that they're gonna need here. And when they are gonna be doing the horizontal drilling, they're gonna be feeding the pipe from this side. So it will be from the east side to the west side. So they're gonna need to have some of the equipment around here. So we just hatched this area because they're gonna need some parking and all that. As part of this land use agreement, there was a side letter with some of the offerings that Eversource is providing on behalf of those easements. I'm happy to go through with you guys if you wanted. If not, it's part of the agenda that was at the DPW committee. Do you guys have any questions? Do you want that I zoom in any particular area?
I have a question. And that is, have you considered, has Eversource considered any other technology rather than horizontal drilling to do this? Because this is an ideal application for something called micro tunneling, where you go underground really at the extreme ends of the excavation, not just under the river, but all the way from the police parking lot, which is where you want to connect to the overhead, and all the way back to wherever it is in East Norwalk that we're picking up. This seems like it would be a much simpler process, not to have any disruption above ground between both extremes. Is that something they've looked at?
I think that the open trench is usually what it is more familiar to do in this case, because they're gonna be just kind of realigning, building some conduits with some electrical vaults. On Elizabeth Street also, it is really more of the hardest part to do that, because they have to come very deep in here, and they are also relocating the water main. But again, one of the issues that we have, as you are very familiar, South North has a lot of underground utilities in many areas, so there are a lot of conflicts. So they prefer to go in and extremely deep to try to avoid most of them.
Vanessa, do you have the cross sections in the iteration that we're seeing now that shows?
Yeah.
the depths that they're going at what particular point, or is that to the plan coming in the future?
Not yet, because as I mentioned, this route hasn't been fully engineered yet, so I do not have the profiles, but the profiles should be right here. It's deep. We know that it's deep, but we are not expecting anything much different than what we saw before in the past. Before, I would say that we were around elevation 40 or 50, but please do not quote me on that because I can't remember after seeing so many interactions. But again, we for Eversource to be able to move forward and file with the siting council, they need to have those easements approved by the city. And I think that after that, and they have a confirmation of the route, is when they're gonna really finalize the design. So as of now, I do not have those profiles, but I'm happy to share with you as soon as I receive them.
Has there been any indication from Eversource when those finalized plans will be ready for submission?
They should not take that long. I think that what will happen is after they file with the siting council, they should be working at the same time on finalizing those designs.
Okay, so what, but isn't it not appropriate for them to submit application to the siting council with any, as if maybe we have none, but maybe we have some conditions? Shouldn't they be part of what they do, their submission to the siting council?
I'll be honest, I'm not very familiar on how that application goes. Maybe they are ready to submit that with the profiles by the time that they're gonna file with the permit, but again, we haven't received the profiles yet. I'm happy to check with them and get back to you guys to let you know when would be the timeline for the profiles to be ready. But as of now, the city hasn't received, but from past conversations, we know that the profile will not change dramatically from what it was before. Remember, they were already very deep when they were proposing the route under the visitor's dock. Again, we're expecting that should be deep again, because now they have to go further on the horizontal drilling. So they'll have to come down around here and really kind of go all the way in under the river. So it should be very close to what we saw before.
John, I'd like to ask a question of Vanessa.
Sure.
Yeah, Vanessa, did Eversource initiate these plans, or did the city request these plans from Eversource? Did they come forward with this before the city made a request to see these plans? Did they
No,
prepare-
they show it to us, John. So our office and the mayor's office, we had some interactions with them. There was one time there was a little bit of a pause, more because we asked them to look at another route. We would like to have the horizontal drilling and try to be out of Vets Park as much as possible. We asked them to look at other possibilities. So for a few months, they were working on their own to try to accommodate us. And then also one of the big things about this route is that they had to also have permission from Connecticut DOT, because now they're placing 2 vaults and also part of the horizontal drilling onto Route 136. So there was also some time that they were in negotiation with Connecticut DOT to see if this would be also, if they would be in concurrence on this route. So we also had a meeting, so Connecticut DOT understood the city position, heard our concerns, and then they agree on that. And we had a meeting with the 3 of us, meaning the city, DOT, and Eversource, where the city said that we would support this route. And that's when they ended up finalizing and sending this to us a few months ago.
in discussing the new route that they have here, I noticed that the angle is certainly different from the previous proposal. in that the previous proposal went down the two properties, the Donardo property, and I guess is a spin, what was it?
It's
DOT owns the
Spinnaker, I
property,
believe is the
and
one.
straight down through. But now I understand the mantra of Eversource was that they could not put any kind of bend in the line. And there's a slight bow down here, right near the visitor's dock. Is that something that they discussed perhaps as permissible or that they could do with that extension of the line from here?
Yeah, they are very comfortable that they can do that. I know there is a lot of restrictions on how much they can bend and where they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go.
we discussed that with actually one of the experts that we were in contact with regard to horizontal drilling, is that they can bow it slightly, but I didn't know exactly whether this curvature right here fit the definition of the bend, the proper type of bend that they could use in this particular area right here. It seems that it seems a gradual bend, but nonetheless a bend at you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, when they show us the route, again, they went back to the drawing board, and before they came back to us, they had to make sure that they could build this.
Right.
So the plan that you guys seen, Eversource assures that they will be able to follow. So again, they haven't developed to 100% design yet, but they got to some schematic design and they engineered, so they are in a confidence level that they can build what they are proposing.
All right, Vanessa, I just want to share my screen that I have of the same area of an aerial view that we have. If I can do that right here. Okay, let me share my screen here.
Upper right, John.
Upper right, here it is here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, can you see that? Can you see the screen? Right here. So can you see the screen? Did you share it? John?
I see it. We see
I
it.
can see it.
see it.
I see it.
We can see it.
All right. All right, so the line that's proposed then is going to come between these two this property here, straight down in this direction here. And do we know approximate how far from the north end of the dock that they plan to come over in this area? Right here?
I don't have a distance yet, but I
Okay.
can tell you that one day it will be very, very close, more towards the bridge that they can angle. So let's do the opposite. So you see more or less that white car that is in the front of the driveway out of Vets Park?
You right in here?
Yes, yes. So let's say if you go, where is the car? So outside the park.
Yeah, right in
So
here.
the bolts will be more or less, yeah, but outside, John, go a little bit out of the park on Route 136.
I'm
Go
trying
north.
to- You mean
Yeah,
that
so,
in here?
yeah, so around there are the vaults. So if you, and remember, they almost have to come as a straight line. So this is where they are landing. So you can, if you follow your cursor, kind of trying to angle that, you're gonna have a good idea that we're much north, because they're just get exactly like that. And then they're gonna kind of do that slide angle
That little bend
to
in here.
get yes.
Okay. So the small area of the visitors dock area, the paved area is going to be just in here. That
No, they do not even touch that.
They're not
They
even touch that.
still, no, yes, the horizontal drilling goes exactly there. Yes, keep
Oh, right
going,
in
then
here.
go through Route 136. They are right up, yeah, and then
That's
they go out.
that's state property there, yes. Right here.
So, yeah, so they go, let's say, passing almost that second tree, they are totally out already on Route 136.
I see.
So that's how they can come almost straight. Yeah.
Now, are they going to do the horizontal drilling from both ends?
They're gonna just do from Vets Park.
Oh, so they're going to start here.
Start and finish. They're gonna feed everything from there.
Okay, and they're going to finish at this end over here. They're going to finish on Water Street side.
Yes, but they all pipe will be feed from Vets Park, from the side of Vets Park,
Oh, I
from
see.
Route 136.
Okay. Right.
Can I make a comment?
Uh,
John?
Jeff would like to make a comment. Yeah. Jeff.
Vanessa, as we've talked about this project for several years with the Corps of Engineers. And so Eversource requires a relatively new type of permit from the Corps, which is called, as you know, a Section 408 permit, because it will be work potentially affecting and underneath the federal navigation project. So that the Corps has told us that they will require Eversource, it will be a condition of any approval that the Corps issues, that if the position of this line, if the Corps of Engineers maintains the channel in the future or deepens the channel or does any work in the channel, and this line interferes with that work, Eversource will be responsible for either moving the line or otherwise mitigating the impact. So we've talked with the Corps and also Deep a little bit about having a similar condition with respect to the city's interests with the visitors dock. And that condition would be if in the future the city proceeds to maintain or replace or repair the visitors dock, that this cable and if the cable has any adverse impact on that, Eversource will either move it or otherwise mitigate it. So we were pursuing a similar, as we would present to Deep in the Deep permit and to the Siting Council, an agreement to protect the city's interests with the visitors dock, just the same or similar to what the Corps is going to pursue to protect its interest with the federal channel. So we would hope that the DPW would be supportive of that sort of condition. And then the other question we have is that, does the city intend to apply in the Siting Council process as an intervener or a formal party to best protect its interest during those discussions?
So your first question, I understand the concern. We also have, of course, some concerns on what will be the application of having the cable, but at the same time, we know that where they are coming, it will be deep and off the dock. So we believe that on that case, we should be safe. But again, it's one point that it is valid to bring it up to the permitting agencies and understand better. I think that when we have the profile, we're going to have a much better idea of exactly where that cable will be. In regards to the second question, I don't know the answer to that. I'll be honest. I think this is more an administration question. I can answer more about the route. I can explain about this agreement, but I don't know exactly, to be honest, what will be necessary for the Siting Council and what kind of documents the city would produce. I think this can be addressed at the mayor's office.
Well, thank you. I just to reiterate, I think that the commission is, as we talked about this with the Corps and with Deep, that it's logical and reasonable to have the same level of protection in an agreement with Eversource as the federal government would have with respect to affecting the federal channel. And if they feel that they can do this in a way that won't adversely affect the city's ability to maintain or repair or replace the visitors dock, then we put that in a legal agreement. And if it does, then Eversource has to mitigate that impact. And I think that's something that we've asked Deep to consider in its permit conditions, in which the commission will pursue. So, thank you.
Vanessa?
Do we know? Sorry, do we know if there's the land use agreement for Vets Park extends to the extent of our visitors dock?
No, it does not, because what happened again, they only go up to the area here. So the land use agreement is only for the parcel portion of it, and also for the police headquarters. So the land use agreement is not really addressing the channel, because the land use agreement is for them to be able to have access to the two parcels. So let me tell you one thing. If this work was going to be done all on the street, we would be able to issue an encroachment permit. So let's say that I have, and that happen every day, right? So let's say that Eversource, they want to either, or any utility company, they need to come and add lines to the street. If it is on the right of way, DPW through the encroachment permit, they are able to issue them a permit so they can do the work, right? In this case, we do not have the restriction over a parcel. We cannot issue an encroachment permit over a parcel. All the time that they need access to a parcel for whatever reason, we need to have a land use agreement. And the land use agreement has to be brought in front of Common Council for approval.
Right.
And the channel to do that is through DPW. So that's what is happening now. So they need the access. And that's what was the legal draft, the land use agreement for access is pretty much kind of an easement that they are taking. And then if the work, because the work is happening on a parcel.
Right, so it's not a DPW encroachment thing, it's a utility easement through either Parks Department property or Police Department property, all city property. So
that's correct.
So the utility easement, it's not from the center of the earth to the sky. It's bounded by certain limits. So, we'd be interested in, having an upper bound on it at some depth that would never encroach upon, dock work. I mean, we're not going to sink piles, 50 feet down, but, there's a just like, the Army Corps isn't going to dredge to -50, but, there already are certain limits for the other cables being laid for the walk bridge about how deep they have to go. And this is a much more.
And Eversource knows that. We've been working closely and they totally understand all the concerns and all the limitations that the city do not want to have. So that's what I'm very confident that based on the last profiles that they show, I don't think that these profiles will be much different. They still need to come very deep to be able to make all the angle that is needed. I believe that as soon as they start coming out of the vault, they have to start dipping like a 45-degree, from what I remember, to be able to go as deep as needed. At the same time, they don't want to be shallow because they don't want that anybody by accident hit their lines. So the deeper they are, the safer for them. And again, they still have to go through a whole permit process where all that will be addressed with the Army Corps and with DEP. And
Vanessa, has the DOT or the Eversource considered, I go back to micro tunneling again, you can go much deeper, you can go 30, 40 feet under the low ground and you can go right under all of South Norwalk, below any existing utilities or anything and run it in a straight line. It might be a little more expensive, but I'm looking at the disruption this is going to make on 136 Elizabeth Street, and it's going to be a mess for years where the technology is right there to dig a hole over by Smith Street and 25 Van Street over there and come down and go straight to wherever they want to go, right under the whole thing, well below any place it's going to have any effect. It's a more costly way of doing it, but you have to think the only disruption you'd have to traffic with that technology is at one end and the other end. As far as I know, I'm not an expert on this. I just follow it, this kind of construction stuff online a lot. But this is an accepted way of doing it because you bring a big hole at either end and you install a giant or whatever size concrete conduit you want that goes straight underneath everything. So has that been considered?
I believe they consider, particularly for Elizabeth Street, because of the depth of that open trench. But I do not know exactly the reasons why that was not being moved forward. I'm happy to ask again. But in regards to disruption, we kind of worked a little bit through all these interactions on these past 5 years on what would be the MPT for those areas. So I just want to bring to your attention that, again, because of the permit limitations, this work can only happen during the winter. So and what is possible is that they're gonna probably start the open trench work after they get the permits. And some of the work is within the police headquarters, where they're gonna provide another driveway access and also some valet parking for the police department during construction. That work should take only about 2 weeks when they are doing the trenching. Elizabeth Street, we may consider a partial closure on that road, or remove temporary parking so we can have at least one lane open during construction. But we have, the good thing is that we have the other 2 streets that will be able to accommodate the traffic there. We have, sorry, I forgot the name of the streets. It's not Day
Elizabeth
Street.
Monroe.
Yeah, we have Monroe that is usually the route that the trucks use because it's where we have clearance under the bridge. And then we have Haviland for the other way. So we know that it is not ideal, but at the same time, it is not a big detour for that area. When we get to Route 136, one option that we considered was that they're only going to be working more on the right lane. The vaults are almost on the sidewalk, and that's when they start the trenching. And again, we're gonna just have alternate lanes, but they still can keep traffic. The only part that will be a little bit tricky is when they have to do the cross on Seaview, because that one, they have to get through that intersection. So we just need to work the details on that, but usually do not take that long. So we may be just a couple of days. I don't know if we're gonna allow work at night, or if we will have to do during weekends, or it will be during the day in a certain time. We do not know exactly, but we have looked into it, and we think that it's very possible to do that. There is also another possibility, because as part of the Walk Bridge program, there will be some underground utilities that will be done through Fort Point. And maybe when they are doing that work, if the timeline coincides, they may be using the same time of those closures to do their excavation as well.
It's interesting, Vanessa, that the route they've chosen is one that we had brainstormed with them at the Harbor Commission. And at the time, we were looking for mitigation, and it made a lot of sense because ConnDOT was doing dredging by the Maritime Center parking area, and they may need to do some dredging also on the west side on the Donardo / Fowler property. So our thought was, if that route that they're now proposing for mitigation for the city, that they would dredge out that whole area, also even it off and put up a bulkhead, which would allow Parks and Recs to have more docks there for transient docking, which would obviously be a boost for our restaurant and community entities. So, I mean, that's kind of like in line of what we were thinking en route, but mitigation is very, very much on the weak side for what we were proposing.
John, let me interject. Let me make, again, 2 suggestions. One, that when Eversource comes back with the proposal, that, again, Vanessa, I'm sure Eversource is going to come back to you with their proposal, that you have, that we'd like to request that Eversource present that to the commission themselves, you know, and so we can speak directly to the principals involved in the application. That is number one. And that, John, that we initiate our original proposal that we've already constructed, and that is that we write to the siding council our perhaps conditions that we would like to see with regard to our coverage of the visitors dock, and that that would make clear that the city will not be limited in any way with maintenance, operation, and replacement of the facility as a result of the relocation of the transmission lines. And if it is, that Eversource will compensate the city accordingly, so that we cover our own interest as the Army Corps covers their interest underneath the harbor. So,
Might I ask a question, John? I feel-
Yeah, John. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah.
One other question. Does the utility have an easement now over the 68 Water Street property, or is that still being negotiated, or might that property be acquired, or is there any additional negotiations or agreements that have to be achieved to cut through that property on the west side for the directional drilling? Or has that all been worked out?
I believe Connecticut DOT is working on that right of way. We're not gonna be Eversource.
The Eversource route, though, will angle through the 68 Water Street property for the directional drilling.
Mhm.
So if the DOT is negotiating with the property owner for that right of way, not Eversource?
That's correct. So after DOT do the negotiation on those parcels, they're gonna allow the use for Eversource. So Eversource is not direct doing the right of way on those two parcels.
We have to sort that out because we also have a pending application by that property owner for a bulkhead on that property. And how that may relate then to the use of that property, but I guess that's something that will be worked out in the permit process or coordinated.
How deep in the ground does an easement go? Is there a rule on that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
If you do a tunnel under a property, do you need an easement if you're 30 feet below ground?
In my experience, yes. When we were tunneling in New York, we had to put ground anchors into the rock. So we were, the tunnel may be under city property. You had an easement for that. You also had an easement for your anchors that you had to put into to stabilize the earth. And some of these were going under, under the high rises of Manhattan. And so this is the MTA, and they went to court to get an easement for it was a condemnation, and the judge would award the property owner some nominal amount for their rights for the rock 50 feet down or 60 feet down. It didn't go up to the surface. It was from an elevation down. So it was a three-dimensional easement.
Yes, Chris, and this is Jeff again. When we first heard these plans from Eversource, and their plan involved is running that line along the property line between 68 Water Street and the property to the south. And they said that they were doing that so as not to limit future redevelopment on those properties. So if they're cutting now into that 68 Water Street property, that then would be our understanding that that's going to limit future development on that property, and the property owner is probably going to, that's part of the negotiation, I guess, with DOT, would want some consideration for the loss of development rights. But Eversource specifically told us that there would be a loss of development rights if the line did not go along the shared property line.
Right, and they'll have vaults in that piece of property too, which are ground level things, and even if it goes down at 45 degrees, there's a zone, there'll be an area of that property that you wouldn't be able to put a foundation on or a bill or a structure.
Right.
And that was the impetus for my question about the negotiations with the property owner, because I'm imagining that the property owner is going to want some consideration for the loss of development opportunities.
Yeah.
Well, John, I mean, we can move forward with the discussion, or we can stop here and go forward with.
John, I think at this point, without having a formal application.
Yeah, there's no application.
with the finalized plans.
But
so
we'd
can-
like to go forward, John, and mention to the siting council, regarding our proposal that you already started to construct, and that was dealing with the city's rights and any encroachment and any alteration that might occur, that the Eversource would be hopefully, certainly responsible, would not limit us into what we need to do in future.
Yes. and-
Right, that language needs to be put in there, but I'd like to see them come before us before.
Well, that was my first request, and that when the application does move forward, that they do present this application to us, in a proper manner.
Right.
as any
Prior,
applicant would.
prior to the siting council.
Well, if that would be correct, yes.
So the siting council would have any conditions that we're suggesting.
Right, it would be most helpful also to know the schedule that the utility intends to follow now with the submittal to the siting council, so we can be prepared to participate in that process. And I don't know if Mr. Grzywinski from Deep is is at the meeting tonight, but it was our understanding that he had recommended to the utility that they go through the siting council process first prior to pursuing the Deep permit. Because conceivably the siting council theoretically could adjust the route. But as long as we can know what, as DPW learns, what the schedule is, and so we can be prepared, to submit our comments to first the siting council and then Deep, that would be a big help. And to understand what the siting council's process is, because several years ago, it was our understanding that with the siting council process, there would be a request by the city made to have a public hearing on this that would be held in Norwalk. Now, I don't
Well,
know.
we were told that when this whole subject came up, when they wanted to go through an expedited process to get into Army Corps, that they guaranteed us that that the siting council would have a public
Yes.
hearing in Norwalk.
Yes.
So we just want to make sure that does take place. I think at this point, no sense going any further. I'd just like to ask Anthony Carr if he'd like to weigh in. He was kind enough to join us on this call. Maybe you want to put in a comment or two.
Sure, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. So after listening tonight, I think everybody's hitting the mark appropriately in the sense that this application, you're still going to have subsequent bites at the apple to weigh in, and you're going to have an opportunity to give as many or as little comments as you choose to feel on the application. And as Vanessa said, these are schematic drawings. They're not engineered to the point, if the lines move a little bit up and down, left to right, without impacting any utilities or a dock or some kind of substantial structure, that would be the extent of it. There would be minimal change to the current alignment, right? So the things that are shown now as underground trenching will stay as underground trenching. The stuff that's shown as horizontal drilling will remain as horizontal drilling. And you ask good questions about the elevations and the profiles, and they will come. And we are committed, which is why Vanessa and I are here tonight, to keep the commission from this point updated as we receive plans, as we move forward to points that are milestones that make sense, right? We didn't want to share anything potentially before Eversource even gave it to us because the plan was changing and it wouldn't have been representative of what you actually would have to comment on or think about. So we didn't really want to waste anybody's time. And of course, Eversource just gave us these plans too. These are not plans that have been sitting on the shelf for a while. I know that there's been talk about for the last few years.
We've been asking them for these plans for 3 years continually, and they chose to bypass us, but that's another story. Now we have a direct connect with the city agencies. They've offered to keep that dialogue open, keep us in the loop, honor what our requests are so far that we've made this evening, and let's move forward. And I thank you both very much for attending the meeting. It was enlightening.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having us. Vanessa, great job as usual with the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the commission. Have a nice night. We'll
All
talk
right,
soon.
Anthony, you too. Vanessa, take care. Thank you very much for giving me the first lowdown on this project last week.
You're very welcome. Anytime.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Moving forward, our second application this evening is 80 and 84 South Seaview Avenue. It's a pre-submission application. I've asked Mr. Tom Ryder to come by and explain that to us. There have been some questions with regard to that particular proposal on Seaview Avenue, and the applicant proposes to retain 121 plus or minus square foot of concrete block wall and associated 110 foot of riprap along the shoreline of 84 Seaview Avenue. And then they want to put two finger floats to the northern end of the dock, restore the use of the existing dock back to its commercial marina, and create a public access on the northern portion of the elevated dock, deck rather, on Seaview Avenue. The proposal includes the conversation of an existing shed on the public access deck in the northwest corner of 80 Seaview Avenue to be used as a marina office. And aside from the two finger floats proposed on the existing dock, there's been no physical changes are proposed to the structure. So, Mr. Ryder, if you'd like to give a quick review of there, because I know we have some questions with regard to this particular proposal. So if you'd like to, do you have the proposal here, or do you want me to share my screen to be?
I have capabilities to share the screen here. It's still being shared by somebody else. Can I just?
Okay, there you go.
Okay, that's fine. Let me, this is the screen. Basically, this is the same information I've submitted to you. I think you can see the information, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is 80 and 84 Seaview Avenue. You're probably all familiar with it. It's Overton's and Harbor Lights. Over here is Veterans Park. Again, these are areas that are probably all familiar to all of you. So let me scroll down here to the application materials. Sorry, let's get that upside right. And yes, as just mentioned, we do have a number of things on here. There was some violations on this property that we wanted to, we had to correct. As part of that, we are kind of improving a number of situations here that it has to do with the public access. And we're kind of modifying some other things as we go here. So what I will do is just kind of explain, there's going to be two figures here. Because we had some things going on for the dock and we had some things going on for the site. So we have two figures, which I will be presenting here. The first one here is, this is Overton's area. There's the outline for Overton's. This all here is asphalt. And this is that existing deck, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a public access deck. And then here's an existing shed to it. I do have some photographs if you guys have any questions down later, but right now we'll look on the plan view. Over here is the parking lot and Harbor Lights. So one of the things that we're doing is rebuilding a section of wall here. There is a small boulder wall. I think we discussed this. Some of you might have been on the call a couple of weeks ago, a month ago or so, 2 months ago, when we were doing an elevated deck over here and we're paving the parking lot. We're asking for that. So during that discussion, we kind of mentioned that there was a wall here. It's a boulder wall. It kind of goes along here, extended beyond here, goes over here, and then down here. This section of wall here is boulder, and it's only a couple feet high, and it was hit by a car a long time ago, and we are asking to repair that. This will be repaired in kind. There'll be an excavator here helping some masons down here, and then there may be an need for an excavator to come down here with a reach to help the masons down here below as well. So that's one section of the component. The other one was we have this existing wooden deck. Now this wooden deck is public access. It's actually over the water. And so people were walking over here all the time, and the owners were talking about to the DEP, so they don't really like people walking through the parking lots. It's kind of unsafe, and they can't really regulate it. So what we came up with, the DEP actually had this idea, which was great, and then we adopted it, is there's an area, and again, I have pictures if you guys are interested, to open up this area between the building and the northern property line, and between the parking area and the northern property line, to have a 4-foot wide public access area dedicated right to this deck. So that people can go right from Seaview Avenue right over to the deck. Now, since it's kind of out of place to talk about this, but I'll talk about it now, is that we are also asking for this wall down here to be retained, which again is on the other site plan. But what I'll do is, in compensation for that agreement we've made with the DEP, is that we've offered an additional public access area. Now, this is an elevated deck that we put on probably April or May. And then we're proposing a portion of it to be accessible to the public access. So those are just a couple of the components. Let me go back to the other components that we're discussing in here. Now, they have an existing dock right here. And well, it actually just goes to here right now. So you come down the ramp, off the deck, come off the ramp here, and you can go either way here onto the dock. Now, they actually, as part of a previous permit from the DEP, they actually have the right to put in finger floats in here. They chose not to because they want to be able to have larger vessels come in here. But in order to maintain this large dock system, they had to offer it some way that was consistent with water dependent use. So we decided to make it into a back to its original design, which was a commercial marina. So there's a shed over here, which is going to become the office. And then we're going to put in a float here and a float here. And then what that will allow is the renting of 4 spaces. Well, so let me put it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4 will be rentable. And then these 2 spaces in here will be transient, open for public access. If somebody go over here, hop in here, dock their boat, go into the public access ramp, eat some food or whatever, and then go back out and go away, or they can walk along the property, whatever. It's public access, it's available. So all we're asking for here from the DEP permit process and through your agency is we're going to be putting in these 2 finger floats, which are exactly identical to this one and actually identical to what was allowed previously, which they're not going to be putting in. Another component of this is there is a seawall right here and here that was repaired a while back after Sandy and a couple other storms in here, and it never really got a permit for it. DEP issued a violation saying that it was never, you need to correct this. So we're now doing that. And there was, this is kind of not a contention, but there was already riprap here, but apparently it was never authorized. It was shown on a 1997 permit. However, it was never really specified in the permit. So we are now asking this riprap here to be authorized. There is not going to be any work to this wall or to this riprap. It is really just asking it to be authorized, and we're going through the application process to do so. Again, this shed is not going to be modified. It would be internally. There's probably going to be a little shelf or something like that where you can put an office in here, but there's not going to be any external modifications. So as stated in the introduction, the only modifications we're having are these 2 floats and that modification to that wall, which is over here.
Yeah.
And I will now open up to anybody's questions, but I do have some photographs.
Tom, I'd like to ask a question too. Looking at the left side of this figure right here, you have these 2 boats constructed in the access in the right of way of the city's property here. That if you notice this here, this area
right here.
Yeah. That's encroaching on a right of way for the city in this area right here. And I'm just wondering about the existence of this dock here. And also the placement of the boat, because one of the previous applications that we saw, this boat here was, well, the vessel was not here, placed in here. Now we have vessels placed in this area right here, along with this finger pier. I know this finger pier was here.
This finger pier is existing, yes.
Yeah. But again, as far as the city's right of way, this is right in the middle of the city's right of way for extension of the right of way for the city in here, as far as the street end is concerned. Has that been considered?
Yeah, we are, the owners are working with the mayor and I guess planning and zoning to discuss any issues that they have with that. This is an existing dock that's been around for, I don't know, 30, 40 years or whatever it's been, and is authorized with the DEP. It's my understanding that the owners have spoken with the mayor and with other people, and that they don't seem to have an issue with it. But we are in communication with that, and if anything does arise from that, then obviously we will address that. But it is an
We would-
authorized dock at the moment.
We would need to chime in on that because that right now is inconsistent with the Nauk Harbor Management Plan with regard to, and also the mission, one of the missions of the Harbor Commission. And I'll certainly ask Mr. Mangles to discuss that, is to open up our street ends for public access. And this is an extension of that public access area right here. I don't know,
Well,
Jeff, would you like to?
I can.
Sure,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that we are kind of flexible in here. There is a potential when we were working with the DEP on all that stuff. We had kind of stuck the transient areas up here. We could stick the transient areas down here. And then these areas would be with transients, and therefore, public could walk down this public access way into the deck area, the dock area, and access these two areas if you wish them to be transient, if that's kind of the way you're heading with that, but just offer that as an alternative.
Yeah, Tom, the slip's on the north side of, yep, right there. So what is the length of that dock right there that's
This dock here?
going north to south? Yep. Mhm.
That dock there, I have the plans right here in front of me, so I figured you're gonna ask that kind of question.
You got 3 foot fingers over there, so
Yeah,
that's
3 foot
6 feet
fingers
out of there.
From this point here, which is the ramp, to the end is 27 feet. From the northern end of this ramp to the northern end of this slope. This is 27 feet.
Okay, so you need, okay, so that would leave you about what, 8 feet apart, those?
Well,
those gonna be?
I have put 10, these are 10 feet in between, so 10,
10
3,
foot.
10, 3.
Okay, the issue that happened in the past was that the boat, which wasn't on the original drawing, that's on the north side of that, yep, that boat. So the property next to there is the East Norfolk Boating and Yacht Club, and there's a vessel that is right next to that, right on that property line, if you will. It's the so-called property line. So is that going to be a leased slip? Is that what you're saying there? Or are those 3 going to just be transient there?
Well, this is open for discussion. Again, we just submitted this to the DEP. We haven't received any formal comments on that yet. We did initially before we submitted. But this is all kind of fluid as to, we are required by the DEP to have 2 transient slips. We chose them here and here. They could be elsewhere, but we have submitted an application for here just because those are what we chose, only because it's right off the public access deck. I thought that would be a good place for them. We had not had your inputs, and we have not received any input specifically on the DEP on whether they prefer them somewhere else. So we are at that stage now where, we are flexible, and if there are issues, we obviously can address them.
Right, in the northernmost spot there, slip that you have, if that is a transient slip, then you don't know what type of boat is going in there.
Well,
And that
these are
would certainly impede, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's a slip, that's that's going to impede the safe navigation over at East Norfolk Boating and Yacht Club for the slip that is to the north of that.
Yep. Well, I'm saying, yep, I'm saying I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned, so those are 16 feet. Do you have the federal anchorage line on this somewhere?
No, no, I do not.
Okay. Because it may be too long. I'm not sure, but we would need to see that. And also you stated that you were going to repair where the car hit the wall, but the car didn't actually hit the wall. It went through the fence, but so if you can go back to there.
Let me see that. That would be.
Yep, there you go. So is the area only going to be where you say rebuild 4-foot concrete walkway?
What I'm going to do here is
right where that is.
Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pull up my photographs. I think we can explain that.
I have photos as well if you want me to do it.
Well, no, I have them all ready to go here, but there is a, to speak about here, there's a pile, there's a pile that's located right here, and you can see that from the road. And the limit of the wall is going to be from Seaview Avenue to this pile.
And what about,
I'm sorry.
what about the rest of the seawall that's going to be there? Because it's in horrible shape over there.
Well, not at this moment. We are going to have to repair it eventually, but right now there's funds and other things going on in here. So right now, I think that this is all they're interested in repairing at the moment. We have had, we originally had an application that we were preparing to, look at all of this wall and repair it as necessary. I think it got a little too expensive, and I think, so it's something that, and they had an engineer come out. I'm not privy to the actual results of that, but I think they had a structural engineer come out and look at all of this stuff. And they did identify what areas needed to be fixed and which areas could remain. And so they are on that. That is something that's obviously on one of our table, one of our focus points. But for this particular application, we are asking for this portion.
Yeah, if you're going to, extend that walkway all the way to the existing public access deck, if you would, to me, it would make sense to do it right the first time. I mean, if you want to show your pictures, I can show my pictures, but.
Well, I'll do stop share, and then I will do another screen share, and then here and here. So here is, let me see, here is the wall. Right, a car kind of landed over here somewhere. I didn't see it. I don't know where exactly it landed, but the wall was damaged, and you can see it does need some repair. Here is this pile. Over here somewhere is the road, and here is this boulder wall. Now the boulder wall converts to transitions to a timber and kind of concrete wall from here back. So this is a good section point for this kind of brick, in the case that we have a boulder wall here, which we're replacing now, and then we can place it in kind with boulders, and then the other walls can be replaced in kind, as a separate thing, because those are all kind of similar walls back here. So right now.
So Tom, the point that I was making about the vessel that's over on the adjacent property right there. So you could see that there's going to be awful tight over there. So that's a concern there.
Yep.
But go ahead, please continue.
No, I agree with you. I agree that, and that's probably something that DEP is going to raise, and probably something you're going to be putting in your comments as well. Just to go through the photographs I have so you can visualize everything. This is the wall here, and here's the pile. This is going to be 4 foot wide, and it's going to go over to the deck over here in the background. Here's a look from the other way. It's actually kind of made for it. We're going to have to close off a couple of things in here so that the utilities aren't shown, but this is actually a pretty good idea the DEP had, and it's kind of already kind of made for it. But right, this is all going to be torn down. Let me go back to the wall. This is all going to be torn down. We're going to go down about 2 feet, if necessary, to the base boulders. And if they need to be reset, they'll be reset. And then a mason's going to rebuild this entire section of the wall. So we are going to do it once. We're going to do it correctly, so that it can be not only rebuilt for a long time, but it can also provide stability for this for the walkway. And then this is just the section of on that elevated deck that'll be for public access. This is the public access deck here. And then this is the wall and the riprap that I spoke about earlier that is going to be retained.
Okay, these don't really show the condition of the seawall, so I could share my screen.
Okay, I've stopped.
So here's a condition from the East Norwood Boating Yacht Club. Can you see?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so here's this. This is where the piling is.
Pile. Yep.
And you would repair this street side.
Yep.
And this is timber retaining wall.
Yes.
This is a little bit closer, and you could see that this is going down more than 2 feet for sure. I mean, this is all rubble. at this point, and it's gonna have to be repaired. This is the location looking towards the east, from the west towards the east, and you can see the condition of the seawall here. And I also noticed that this deck from your drawing is actually extending beyond the so-called property line. Is that correct?
Yes, actually a couple feet over, yes.
Mhm. And again, here is the condition of this seawall, which you could tell is not quite up to my standard, I wouldn't say. Just a couple of other pictures here where it's just fallen apart. There's some water line here, some type of line. I'm not sure. It comes up here and goes to the right. I don't even know what that is. But you can see it comes up here and then I think goes into the building. I'm not sure about that. This is the dock that you're talking about here. So I would be concerned if there was a vessel that was tied up on this side for navigation purposes over to the East Norwood Boating and Yacht Club side. As mentioned before, this is the street end at First Street and Seaview. And as you can see, there is encroachment onto that street end. It's just a tighter shot here.
Yep, I've been to the property. I'm aware of these, the photographs.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up to everyone's attention. I'll stop sharing. So there is some concern there, in my opinion, and certainly that seawall is. I mean, if you're going to do the work, you might as well do the work.
Well, we are doing the work. And what I'm saying is that we have had, I was not privy to that particular thing. I do not have the report, but like I said, they have the whole wall has been evaluated and they do know which sections are good and which ones aren't. You can't just, I mean, it's not, these are like different walls. It's a whole different pattern here, as we discussed earlier. This is a boulder wall and that is a timber wall. So what right now is the application is for this wall to be repaired. But even if we did the entire wall, we would still stop at this wall and do this boulder wall in kind and then start that wall and with a different type of wall and continue on. So we are aware of it. They are, we actually had an application submitted originally for this. We didn't actually submit it because all these other things kind of came up. So all I'm saying is that we are aware of it. They have put money toward an engineering reports. They do know what the issues are. They are taking it seriously. It's not something that's lightly. It's just that this is the first step now, and all these violations are the first step. And then we're going to be addressing the other stuff as we go.
Yeah, Tom, I have a question. Is this walkway in this project going to connect with the deck? It appears to me the deck is a couple feet higher than the walkway. Is there going to actually be public access, or do you walk up to the deck and it meets you at the waist and you put your knee up, or how do you do that?
There will be a ramp here. It was shown on the, yeah, there is a ramp. It's a public access grade ramp. I mean, it's the code, and it provides gradual access from the public access level to, from this level to the deck level. As part of the ramp.
Tom, I have a couple of questions. What you're calling public access? One that was, what was existing, the deck that goes over the water, and then you just added a new deck, a smaller one, or that's a proposed?
I'm not screen sharing anymore, so I just realized I'm pointing to things nobody can see. So let me go up to here and do that, and back to my screen sharing. So this area is the public access deck. That is public access. Public access by definition of the DEP is there's no restrictions. Anybody can go onto the deck.
Right, but what you're calling public access is their outdoor dining as well.
Oh, well, All right, there's three areas that we're describing now as public access. One is existing, which is here, and then two proposed. One is an access here, and one is a public access here, which is part of their current deck.
Right, but but that area is what you're calling public access. The existing is their outdoor dining.
Yes,
Okay.
but we're
And-
gonna have to convert it to be public access. We're gonna have to kind of close it off and provide public access to it. We're converting, which is currently public dining or private dining, to, we're gonna be converting that area, closing it off a little bit, to public access.
And the proposed 10 by 15, that's where you're.
Right here. That's what I'm saying. This whole area now, which goes off the scale here, this whole area here is private dining. As part of our proposal here, we're going to take this section, a 10 by 15 portion of that private dining elevated deck, and convert it to public access.
Right, but the other public access there, the larger deck, that is now outdoor dining, correct?
This is currently a public access deck, yes.
But
But
it's out-
Overton's does have picnic tables and they have a tent and things like that there.
Right.
That's
Well,
what John is asking.
It's for the public. It's right. Some people from it is available. People can go here, eat the ice cream cone and go over here to that, but it's not limited to that. Anybody from anywhere else across the street or whatever can walk onto this currently through the parking lot and onto this deck and enjoy.
What you're saying is somebody can put together a picnic lunch or a birthday party and bring all their stuff and eat it there?
Yeah, I've asked the attorney for this to find out what actual regulation, because they've had some problems with this, and that's kind of what we're also discussing as part of the DEP, because some people get on there, they get drunk and they get rowdy in there, and they don't, how do they regulate that? And they also come in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and where's the issue? So we are currently, they are currently working with the DEP to find out what, rights they have, so they don't, there's a limited liability on it, we understand from insurance. But, you don't want somebody coming cranking the radio station really loud and then having, drunk parties over here. So there is
Right.
that concern. There is that concern. Right now,
Well,
our proposal-
there's noise ordinances.
Right,
so,
our
I mean,
proposal is to offer this from dusk till dawn. Now, that may get changed with the DEP. They may have a specific time frame or whatever, but our proposal, which the DEP said we could do something similar to this, but we have a proposal sign here that says public access, and it says public access from dawn till dusk.
All right. So
but
then my
right,
other question,
But after dusk, Overton's is still open, so they can go to that deck.
This is part of our discussion with DEP, because I'm not totally familiar with the legal aspects of public access, and that's where DEP is gonna help us along, and we do have an attorney on board to help them with this as well, but this will kind of have to get flushed out. And
What about sorry, Tom. What about parking for these extra slips and?
Right here.
I mean,
1,
as it
2,
is,
3,
parking
4.
is extremely difficult over there.
Right, now this area is the parking lot for Harbor Lights.
which they paid today.
Oh, they did? Okay, I knew they were paving soon. I didn't know when. Okay, thank you. But there is an access way in here, and there are 4 parking spaces back here that are available to the marina people.
And would that be available to public access people?
No, that has not been any requirements or any discussions with the DEP is having that requirement. We are required to have 1 slot per, I think that's in your regulations, 1 slot of space for every marina slip. But this deck here has been public access for, I don't know, several years now. And the DEP is not requiring any public access to that, because most of this is all pedestrian and has not come up, it has not been an issue.
And the other question I would have, Tom, taking into consideration Jeff Mangels's remarks,
Mhm.
is, are you going to put any limitation on the size of the boats that go into those slips as far as length is concerned?
Well, we'll have to, and again, this is, the way this works, as you're all familiar with, is we submit we work with the DEP and we figure out to the point where they're satisfied and we're satisfied and say, okay, this is a good working one. And then we submit it out to everybody for their comments. So a lot of these types of little details have not been worked out yet. We would like to have smaller boats in this area over here because we don't want them to stick out too far. And we do have, that's a bad example. Let's see where, and we do have larger vessels can be docking here. But this is something that we're still in communication with the DEP on how all this will work. We know that the DEP is fine with the general understanding of all of this, but as to where the transient slips will go and what kind of limits of size of the boats can have and all that kind of stuff is going to come out through their comment process.
Right, so what you've heard tonight, let me sum it up somewhat, is that the vessel to the extreme right may have issues in regards to the boat club. And the vessel on the extreme left, or maybe both, are in the city right away.
Well, this has not been an issue with the DEP. They have understood that this is an existing dock and it's been there for a while and it hasn't come up. We did take the initiative of kind of saying, running through this the owners have contacted certain people to find out if there are any issues with that. I think it was planning and zoning and the mayor's office and who else they had contacted. I'm not.
There's a harbor commission.
But I'm saying we're getting any comments from here and we can address them as we go through the city.
Right. One of the projects the Harbor Commission is working on is to give more public access, and also for tying up of boats to get to moorings, because we've seen our mooring activity wane and go down. And a lot of the reasoning behind it is not having public access for people to take advantage of moorings.
Well, they should
And
help that.
the comment I would make specifically about this, regardless how it's resolved, is the extended riparian right line should not be on the other side of the city right of way. It should be at the applicant's property line, which is the other side of the other side of the DPW, right? The city right of way. So yes, it should be an extension of your property line, not an extension of your neighbor's property line.
Yeah.
Right, so you've extended that line, but you didn't extend the line from Harbor Lights.
That's a good point. That's where, these kind of comments are helpful because we miss things on occasion and that's a valid point.
Yeah.
It would make the encroachment that much more obvious if it was an actual line.
Yeah, that was not intentional. I see your point. And that's fine. We get sometimes pretty close to these types of things and we know what we're doing and sometimes we don't express it all.
Let me just interrupt. Jeff Stead would like to make a comment, John.
This is really interesting because going back 40 years, what took place and what was observed in the East Norwalk Basin was the reason why the Harbor Commission was formed and the Harbor Management Plan was approved. And that was because the property owners had built structures that went out into the Federal Navigation Project. And so the commission solved those problems by working with the congressional delegation, and it took years to reconfigure the boundaries of the navigation project so that the encroaching property owners could apply for permits after the fact to legalize their structures. And it was established in the Harbor Management Plan that there would be, absent any compelling reasons otherwise, there would be a 10-foot setback from the reconfigured Federal Navigation Project. So absent knowing where that navigation project is and whether there's a 10-foot setback, this project, in my opinion, shouldn't go forward. And I'm just thinking of all the time we spent to deal with the unauthorized encroachments into the East Norwalk Basin, and to not understand how far these are set back on an engineering drawing. I think that would be the commission would be making a big mistake. The other, or a big omission. The other thing is, specifically in the Harbor Management Plan, we talk about there's a policy to maintain the unobstructed extension of those public access right-of-ways. So no matter what the P&Z may say, or any other city official, it's inconsistent with the Harbor Management Plan to have that obstruction in the extended right-of-way. And then on the other side, the plan also respects the littoral rights of riparian of littoral property owners, including the rights of property owners affected by projects on the adjoining properties. And we call for a setback from the extended littoral property line. And we refer to the Corps of Engineers guidelines for that. And those guidelines call for a 25-foot setback, but we recognize that can't be achieved in every instance. So we have to look at conditions and see what an appropriate setback would be. But the plan calls for an appropriate setback. So those are three things that I think right now would lead the commission to not make a favorable recommendation on this proposal going forward. And at least we've got to see the survey boundary of the navigation project and the setback from that. And I think DEEP would certainly recognize that and the need for doing that. But those are my comments, and the only reason I'm getting it, speaking in a sort of a loud voice, is looking back to what we did in the East Norwalk Basin, 30 to 40 years ago, to deal with encroachment problems and to deal with the property owners and giving them reasonable rights. We've got to respect all that work and do this properly. And in my opinion, thank you for listening.
How does this interact with the East Basin docks that are in the process of needing major repair, and they're putting it up?
That was different, John, because the East, when you say the East Basin, the city marina docks, those are located inside the navigation project, but they were there with valid permits from the Corps of Engineers. So when we redesigned, and I say we did it because we developed the plan with the congressional delegation and the Corps, it was agreed that the city docks could stay within the navigation project because they had been properly permitted. But all the docks on the east side that were in the channel and were the reason for the Harbor Commission and the plan in the first place, those were unauthorized encroachments to be corrected. And some of the property owners, including East Norwalk Boating and Yacht Club, they voluntarily pulled their docks back, as I recall. Others did not. And when we moved the channel boundaries, we gave everyone a chance to apply for permits to legalize their structures. But it was an understanding that there would be a 10-foot setback.
Yeah, okay. And this dock going back years ago, as I recollect, Overton had a small boat rental there. You could either get a rowboat or a
Bob Moran's facility.
5 horsepower motor, and those boats were all no greater than 16 feet.
Right, but we helped all these property owners out, John, by designing a reconfigured navigation project boundary. We cut the channel off shorter and made the rest of this area anchorage, and we moved it away from the shoreline. So it gave the people who had encroached in violation an opportunity to get after the fact permits, and the owners who had voluntarily pulled back, they could go back out to where they were and still not be in the anchorage. So that has to be, we have to understand where that anchorage is relative to this project. And then the other two parts.
Couple comments here. First of all, this, I think, let's put it this way. This is 12 feet. There's 12 feet between this northern portion of the dock to the riparian line. That's 12 feet. I, at the last minute, put this boat in here. I regret doing so. I will take it out. It's not really a big deal. I said, hey, let's just show what we could potentially have and put it up to the DEP. So I just added this one. I just put it in at the last minute. We signed and sealed it and we sent it up. Sorry. I will take it out. I have no issues with that. The other thing is that I'd like to state is that this dock here with floats, finger floats here, has approval by DEP and Army Corps. This is an approved dock in here. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that that this structure, you wanted to confirm that this has been authorized, and it has. We have, like I said, the only thing we're modifying is putting in two floats, and that was to accommodate their requirement to have transients, which is pretty much equivalent to public access, the transients. And then my apparent mistake of sticking another boat here at the end before it went to print. So I can easily X that out. I have no problem with doing so. I will tell them the reason for that. And I think that, I don't know if there's any other issues that I can address now. There's some other issues that I think has to do with more global aspects of this whole waterfront. But from this actual perspective in this application, I think if I get rid of that boat and maybe we put a limit here that shows it's 12 feet, and then you're understanding that this already is authorized by Army Corps and DEP, with those responses, is there anything else that I should be aware of?
I have a question for you. It's Lori Jones.
Hi.
So, hi. So if you're getting rid of that boat, can you get rid of that additional finger? Because if that finger is there, I imagine somebody's going to be tempted to tie up on the other side. But if we don't want a boat on that side, then you don't need that finger because the second transient can be accessed by that one new finger.
Right. Originally, I had put one finger float in here. And then I said, you know what, it probably would be a lot easier for people to get in, get out, especially if it's transients. They might not be, well, I'm sure that if they have a boat, they're probably experienced, but I just put this float in here just to make it stable for both vessels to do that. And at that point, we also didn't realize we were going to have the transient. I was thinking it was going to be here, but wasn't sure. So I put two floats up here basically for that reason. And then again, at the last minute, I stuck this in here, which is a controversial point, and I said, we'll remove it. So yeah, that is something that you can make in your comments and that I will raise to the DEP as well, is that maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't needed because, you know, this finger float and this float here can access both of these vessels here and may not be needed. So that's a valid point.
And Tom, would you be able to incorporate again to the west side of those docks, the anchorage, the federal navigation, the anchorage area? Where's that line?
I will have to put that on. I do not have that information available to me now, but we can put it on there.
Yeah, that would certainly be important as far as.
Yeah, the best way I would have to get that is off a navigation chart. Right?
It's in the harbor management plan.
Right. Yep. It's also in the harbor management commission.
With northings and eastings, so you should be able to plot it.
Right. And I can get that,
No
right, and I can get that through do KMZ files through Google Earth and find that on there, and then show the distances, and we can do all that. Yes.
Right, but the authoritative way would be to go to the Corps of Engineers website, get the survey drawings that are on the website with coordinates, and then overlay that on your drawing with the setback from that line.
Okay.
And that, I think, absent that, the commission needs that to be able to judge this project.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that's true both at the north and south ends of this project. I don't know if the south end has ever been surveyed where this existing dock is.
Well, I hope the city planning to, well, the commission I know is going ahead to try to keep the city's access opened up. I mean, Jeff, what are the future plans that we plan to do here? This area right in here.
Jeff Mangles? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
So all street ends, we're trying to get public access, and that's with Chris and Alan also really doing the brunt work of that, but identifying locations where we can get public access. That street end right there is perfect. It's a big hunk of land there that we could actually do something with to gain access to the harbor, especially moorings and things that as John Romano pointed out, that interest is waning only because there's no access to put to get a dinghy out to your vessel.
Well, there are tidal wetlands in this area as well. I flagged them. There's tidal wetlands area in here, which would have to be contended with. But and the reason I put that boat there is I had looked at the configuration of the vessels. I didn't notice that one photo that you or I took, whatever, that they had the boat here. But all the boats I've ever seen were in what a north-south orientation. So I didn't think it would be an issue to put that here. I've soon been corrected. But that was the original intention here with this boat goes on here. I've never seen any boats on there, although I did find one in a couple of photographs. So again, this all goes away when I remove that, when we move that boat in there. But I just wanted to show.
Yeah,
that
and
this is-
to Lori's point, removing that finger on the north side of that dock would be a good idea. The in the past, if I remember correctly, and you could check with Deep on this, is that they did have a finger and they had some illegal docks over there.
Right. We
So,
removed that, exactly.
yeah.
Only because it wasn't authorized. We could have actually asked for it. And like I said, now that we're asking for it, they don't seem to have a problem with it, but we'll bring that to attention about the dual and we'll reduce it down to one. But right, there was a float somewhere in this area that was illegal and we removed it once it was notified to us. So right, that's, I think, what you're referring to. I can stop squaring this if it's useful. I can just.
You know, it seems like if you take that finger out, that your setback seems to be fine on that south side. The only thing that may or may not be an issue is the north side is
Yep,
fine,
I know what you meant.
but is the south side, because it's actually going over the property lines and it's in the public access.
Yeah,
So,
and then we also need to know the distance from the federal anchorage.
Yep, you mentioned that. I have that in my notes. That'll be added as well. Yes.
Yeah, the anchorage with the setback.
So what do we do at this point, guys?
Well, the only thing, I mean, right now, you know.
Do we
with those
reject the
two-
application with no prejudice?
Well, with those two points that need, as far as the current application is right now, we would need to, find it inconsistent with the plan until we get that information.
Correct.
Well,
And
also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we would reject it without prejudice.
Well, prejudice, but we're not, it's not being prejudicial, there's information that's certainly missing that it would be actually consistent with the harbor management plan.
Right.
Well, I mean, typically what I would request, I mean, not request, but is that you prepare your comments in there, which then I have to address to the DEP. And I say, well, here's the comments from Harbor Management Commission. Here's how I've addressed them. We've reduced this, we put this on here, and we deal with it for the DEP. I mean, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, but the initial comment would be, the statement is certainly inconsistent with the plan with, again, the need to have further comment from you to.
I'd
Yeah.
recommend revise and resubmit. It's not approved as noted, it's revise and resubmit to the level of these comments.
And that's another valid motion to make.
Mhm.
The resubmittal would include, I think the most important thing really is, well, among the others, is the location of the anchorage line and the setback that's being provided. Absent that, we would not be able to.
Right. We can't
Chris,
fully
from that-
evaluate without that information.
All right, from standpoint of application review, you want to make a recommendation?
Well, I have one question before we do that, is these floats do not extend any further waterward than what was already approved. They're aligned with the existing, I don't have it shared anymore. Sorry, I'm focusing on things. But there are two floats on this dock already, and all we're doing is adding another one, which is in line with that. Does your commission have a big issue with that? All we're doing is adding one float to it at this point.
Okay, so I think that the commission made a point to add the federal anchorage line and setbacks, and I think that that's what we need to do, just so that we have a clear understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we need to research the original permit approval too, so. Whether you make that as part of your submission, Tom, possibly, and then we'll have, and you submit it in a timely fashion where we could review it before we actually meet on it.
So you want the original DEP permit and the Army Corps permits, plus the revised plans.
Right.
You're revised.
Okay.
And what is the motion though with respect to
Well, the current
pre-application submittal?
the current motion as far as the original submittal then would have to be, as we stand, is inconsistent with the plan, awaiting further information.
To be resubmitted in a
Resubmitted.
pre-application.
Reject and resubmit.
Yeah.
Resubmit in a pre-application form
Yeah.
because as presented, the application is inconsistent with the plan and reference the topics we just talked about.
Right. I mean, we could
Uh,
submit that. It should-
John,
Yeah, Dennis.
excuse me, John, shouldn't the application review committee also include their list of requirements or concerns that they have and attach?
We do that. I mean, we
Yes, Dennis, because if we say it's inconsistent with the plan, we have to reference the policies that it's inconsistent with. And those are the policies having to do with the setback from the adjoining property owner and the encroachments into the public access or the public street end right of way. And also the lack of information that's necessary to review it, which is the federal anchorage boundary and the setback.
Right.
that
everything
goes in
should
our
be listed.
comments, Dennis. That goes in our comments.
Okay.
All right.
Need a vote on it.
Yeah, we need to vote on that motion.
Get a second on that motion. Who
All right.
seconds the motion?
I'm sorry, John?
Who made the motion?
Motion seconded by Chris McDonald.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
All right. Aye.
Well, that's a majority, so. Any
we'll get-
abstentions, any abstentions or,
All right, we'll get that out.
okay,
All right. Well, moving forward again.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Tom, thank you.
Tom, you're gonna be still around. I think you have the.
I'm on the next agenda as well, yeah.
Yeah, so the next application is 16 Nearwater Road on Bell Island. The applicants are Spencer and Beth Hampelman, and they propose to remove an existing boat ramp and install a living shoreline. I thought this was kind of a twist of what we normally review.
we love it.
So accordingly, the boat launch ramp will have its asphalt removed and clean fill and gravel placed over the area. And a 6-to-1 slope will be created toward the water line and a living shoreline created using plugs of Spartina alterniflora and Spartina partens above the high tide mark. The existing wooden bulkhead defining the northern and southern sides of the boat ramp and the riprap along the shoreline are being requested to be retained. So I thought it was an interesting project of certainly restoration of certainly of the living shoreline. So Tom, you want to give the commission a review of what they proposed?
Yes, good evening, Tom Ryder with Landtech. The owners of this property, there's two properties. This one is 16 Nearwater, and they own the house at 11. It's right across the street. So when they bought this property years ago, they had this ramp in here, and they said that we don't want it. They wanted to be able to close this hole in here. The DEP would not allow us to put a wall in here. So they said that we don't want this. This is silly. What can we do? And without the DEP allowing us to put a wall in here to combine the two, then we said, well, let's utilize this walls existing here. Let's take out this asphalt and kind of put it the way it was. And here's the float, just looking at it looking at this angle from over here is here. So what we have now is an asphalt old boat ramp that they don't want. And you're right, this is a complete opposite from what you're probably used to. Most people want to put in a boat ramp and take out tidal wetlands. And here we have a boat ramp that we don't want, and we want to put in tidal wetlands. So the irony is noted. Again, I've noted that a long time ago, and I'm happy to do these types of things because I enjoy doing the tidal wetland restorations. So with that, looking at it, here is, you're familiar with Nearwater Road down here on the point, Bell Island, etc. And this is the actual property. They own this property, and here is the boat ramp that we are discussing. So let's just cruise right over here to this one. Let me put it right side up. Oh, I did not do that very well, did I? Okay, put right side up. Here is the water, here is the road, and what you were looking at before was a view looking this way. So what we are planning on doing, which is actually, this probably is not the best, we have a cross section, which I think is probably going to be more useful to you, but let's look at the profile first, the plan view first, is that this area down here is going to be all Spartina alterniflora. And then we will have some Spartina patens in this area here, the high marsh. And then I have some high tide bush here, just kind of as a demarcation. They may not go over the entire area. They probably be a little more scattered just to allow the view in here. But we did want to put some type of demarcation in here. And then we have the lawn area so that they could walk between these two parcels. Because right now they walk down here onto the street and onto this other portion back onto their this is, both of their properties. So here we have asphalt ramping taken out and a lawn being put in, with the remainder of the area being restored for tidal slope as part of a living shoreline or a vegetated slope. So looking at it on a profile is just that. You can see here's the garden area here. And then we start our slope. Here's the high tide bush that I talked about. And then we have our gradual going from patens to alterniflora down into here. We have some pavers in here so that the owners can walk down here and utilize the area, just kind of stand on it, maybe bring in a canoe in and out from this area here. This having being the southern, this is being north, as you can tell. This area here is probably not going to be too well vegetated due to the shading of that. So we expect this to be not as well vegetated as the rest of this area would be. So we took this advantage here is to put the pavers in here, which will just be reset in there. There's no regrading, no anything else needed. We just kind of put pavers in there so that you can walk in there without having the.
Tom, do you have a cut sheet on those pavers?
Right there is a pedestrian paver. They vary by different designs, with different companies, but it says basically press paver into sod until flush with soil. We're not digging anything out, just push them in like a quick cookie cutter. And then any vegetation that grows in or around it, make it maintained. And it's really just a,
Nice.
it's a paver, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one. I think we'll stick with this for our discussion purposes, but that is basically the proposal.
Is this a pre-application proposal?
This is, no, they didn't say, no, Tom, I didn't pick this up on, this is not a pre-application proposal. This is.
No, I'm sorry. I should have preempted all this by saying that this is a COP application, and as part of the COP application, we are required to, well, we probably would have notified you anyway, but we are required to send you a copy of the application.
Tom, this is Jeff again. I think this is a project that the commission could find consistent with the harbor management plan, which supports restoration of coastal areas and also the non-structural approaches to shore protection. Are there any, I know DEEP supports this work. Are there any grant programs available to the property owner to do this work? As there are for municipalities and commercial entities?
A while back in the 90s, there were a lot. That kind of dried up after the years. And it's not something that these owners have asked me to investigate. I have done so just from other projects. There are some grants out there. They're pretty specific in what they can do, and they may apply to this, yes. But it's not something that we have looked at yet because I want to get it through DEP and all that kind of stuff. And then we can pursue funding. But yeah, that is something we're looking at, just not yet.
But for my opinion would be that this is something that this is a proposal the commission could find consistent with the plan, and maybe include a recommendation that after the work is done, it be monitored, over time to ensure that it works works properly. That's a condition that we put in the other
applications. Yeah.
Well, I do a lot of these types of things, and usually a little more steeper than this. I don't usually, I'm not allowed this much room normally to provide my slope. And the DEP in many instances requires that. But this is also, if it's considered a living shoreline, then it is kind of considered a demonstration project from the DEP, meaning that we can still learn from it.
Yes.
So we put monitoring in there so that we can learn. The DEP doesn't usually ding you saying, hey, this didn't work out. But a lot of times we can learn from it saying, hey, we would do better next time, or we can enhance this in this fashion and replants in certain areas. So it is kind of a working dialogue that's going to occur down the road, usually with the DEP permits of this type.
And I think we look forward to hearing what you do learn, or
Right.
Learning what you do learn.
Right. So perhaps put a motion forward.
Yes, put the motion forward, John.
So, anyone from the from the application review want to, or we can sort of mention exactly or reiterate what was discussed, and that is that it is consistent with the harbor management plan with regard to the restoration of shoreline. And as I said, we have other language in our application, in our plan that certainly supports this type of work.
Alan seconds it. All in favor?
All right. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Nope.
So moved.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, I would suggest OSHA regulations dictate that we take a 5-minute break after an hour and
That's a
15
good break for me to leave. Thank you all for your time.
Tom, thank you very much, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, so let's do a 5-minute break and we shall return.
This is OSHA requirements, huh?
Yeah, it's OSHA requirements. Okay. When everybody comes back, I guess we can reconvene.
We have 16 participants, John.
All right, so let's move forward then to the Row 8 Yacht Club.
Yeah.
COP.
All right, I think we have Mr. Ignari's here and Mr. Edwards representing the club. Any event, all right, the next application is from the Row 8 Yacht Club. It's a COP. And the applicant requests a renewal of a mooring field as described in the COP, and they have the number, the previous COP number, which was approved by Sue Jacobson. The mooring field accommodates 125 vessels and are maintained annually by the Row 8 Yacht Club. The annual maintenance includes a seasonal removal of the moorings in accordance with the COP. And the applicant is requesting modification to the permit condition number 2, which requires the certificate holder shall remove the moorings no later than October 31st of any calendar year and shall not install such moorings before April 15th of any calendar year. Specifically, what the applicant is asking for is would like to the ability to leave the moorings in the water year-round in areas located outside of a shellfish resource, or shellfish beds. And the applicant will continue to haul in and inspect all moorings and tackle as requested per the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission management plan. Relief from this condition was discussed with Mr. Carey and with the Director of Bureau of Aquaculture, who was amenable to the applicant's proposed modification. So without further ado, I think we can, Mr. Igneri, or is it Mr. Edwards, like to respond to that application?
As far as removal, I'm gonna remove them anyway, because it's easier for me to do the work on them.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize they were putting that in there. Nothing's really changed. That's what we've been doing for the last 40 years, so. With the renewal of this year's permit, they made sure we came and discussed it with the commission, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But basically, those changes they put in there, we're not changing. I mean, we always take them out by the end of October or that first week of November, and then we start setting them around April 15th. That's the way we've always done it.
But there will be vessels that will be left in.
No, there's no.
That are outside?
No, I mean, our mooring rigs are way up north. Sometimes one of our mooring rigs are in, but no, there's nothing really in the water.
Right.
We leave our dock in until probably December 1, but then when we take that out, obviously everything's out of the water. So. But there's no mooring. We're not using the moorings at that point.
Any other comments from the commission members?
If it's so stated, like Norm is stating, that they're not, that he's going to remove the tackle anyway.
I'm gonna anyway because it was easier for me to do the work on it. So
Right, and understandable. Why would we want to keep that part of the application intact?
Could we listen, could we hear what the Shellfish Commission has to say? Because if, as I understood it, there is a state law having to do with the placement on a private shellfish bed, so it may, the approval of this may rest with the shellfish bed owner, not with the, and we can make a comment, but we can't bypass what the law may say.
The application excludes the shellfish bed. My question would be, is there, are the boundaries established for that bed?
yeah, we're not the only beds that we're on that are privately owned are Norman and Bobby Bloom's, and obviously Hillard Bloom's beds. And we're completely off Norman and Bobby's. We have a few moorings on the Hillard Bloom's shellfish beds, but I talk to them every year, so I ask them before I set mooring. They do let private residents sit on there, especially Norman Bloom, because he always said that he's not going to let a homeowner not have a mooring in front of their house. So, but as far as the yacht club, I don't set anything on his bed that the yacht club owns.
With the understanding that the Bureau of Aquaculture is okay with it, and the affected shellfish bed owners are okay with it. That would be the two main considerations, but we can't bypass whatever the legal rights are of the shellfish bed owners.
Well, what the applicant is saying, what the application is stating is that, as I'm reading this correctly, is the applicant would like the ability to leave moorings in the water year round in areas located outside of the shellfish.
Okay,
shellfish
if that's the case, then that my question wouldn't be relevant.
Right. So, I mean, everything else stands the same, and that is that we will remove all the moorings in those areas, but request the ability to leave the moorings in the water year round in areas located outside of the shellfish beds.
I withdraw my.
Yeah.
I leave 4 moorings in to maintain our line with Norwalk Yacht Club, and everything else is out. And they're not in private beds. So.
Does the Shellfish Commission have a
Yeah,
comment?
Steve, or
Pete's
Any
not
comment?
here. The commission isn't here, just me. I think
Yeah.
it'd be appropriate due to my extensive work with Norm wearing my other volunteer hat for me to abstain from the conversation
Oh, I see. Okay.
without bias.
All right.
Well, maybe we say that the commission has no objection to
Well,
this,
again, that's the
provided, and we also request that comments be provided by the
Shellfish Commission that we've done in the past. That's correct.
I'm going to speak in for 1 second, Lori. I can see
Yes.
that John Igneri is trying to talk. John, I wanted to tell you you're on mute.
John?
Yes.
Okay.
I was-
Oh,
I was
yeah,
just
we
try-
got you.
I was just trying to say that this is very much how we've operated the last 30 years. And the last 3 or 4 times I've been before you, we just wanted to substantiate it in writing this time. But there's absolutely no change to how we're operating. So, which is what Norm's been saying.
Well, again, under the circumstances, does any commission member have any further comment? Again, we would like to sort of reiterate our response in that we have no objection that moving forward, and we sort of wait information from the Shellfish Commission's review to
We
request,
request
yeah.
that the Shellfish Commission be given the
Opportunity
opportunity
to
to provide
respond that.
comments. But we have no objection with the understanding that the Bureau of Aquaculture has no
objection to the plan.
And the proposal would not affect private shellfish beds.
Steve, when do you think when is the Shellfish Commission meeting? Next week?
Yeah, we'd certainly entertain it first Thursday.
Okay.
Okay.
Other
All right,
than that,
you want to move the this is a pre-application, or this is
no,
a
this is,
COP, right?
yeah. Yeah, just as the
What-
comments that we just made.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to move it forward or hold it in abeyance for final approval next month after Shellfish weighs in?
Oh, we don't,
I think we might then in that instance, Deep can act on this right away.
yeah,
There's no.
because it's a COP.
It's a COP, so I think that the commission would want to get its comments in right away. And then also request that Deep consider any comments provided by
By the Shellfish Commission. So we'll get that up, we'll get that out, and that'll be our
Fair way.
recommendation.
So bring some language together in that regard.
Yeah, well, the application can move forward, and that we will certainly await further comment from the Shellfish Commission. Those are the comments we will make to the DEP.
I think it's not just moving forward, that the commission would have no
Objection.
objection as presented
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah,
proposal.
Steve has a comment.
Steve?
Yeah, so just as a point of order, we won't receive this as a COP, but we would be happy, I assume Pete would, to comment as your sister commission on a consultative basis.
So we could say no objection with the understanding that what's requested reflects existing practice, that the Bureau of Aquaculture has expressed no objection, and that the work will not affect private shellfish grounds, and that we also recommend that Deep consider any comments provided by the Shellfish Commission.
Okay, sounds good. And
Any second on that?
Is there a second to that motion? Laurie Jones seconds the motion.
Okay, thank you, Lori. All right,
Laura,
all those in favor? All right, aye. All
okay,
right, great.
sounds
All right,
good.
everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Based on the conversation we just had, it leads me to query if there are no objection from the shell fishermen that work those beds, that people put moorings out there. Are those moorings, this is my question, subject to approval and application to the harbor mooring program?
All our moorings are through the Harbor Commission and.
No, I understand yours, but you,
And most of the ones around there, almost all of them I set, so. For the Bill Island residents, and they're all through there too, so.
they're all through, okay, that answers that question. Thanks, Norm.
Bruce keeps me on my toes.
Okay, all right, okay, let's,
That ends application review.
yep. All right, so then let's go to Harbor Master. Greg?
Hello, hello. Nothing new to report. Getting ready for the boat show this weekend, but other than that, everything's been pretty much status quo.
Greg,
Yeah.
so there was an issue with a vessel versus vessel, right?
What's that?
There was a vessel collision, wasn't there?
Yeah, the other week, not last week, week prior.
It was the night of the meeting last month.
It was Thursday, I believe. It was the early Thursday morning. Three guys in a little, probably 10-foot skiff had been run over by another boat, and I got the team out there, and we searched for probably 7 hours looking for a victim. And then the next morning, once I called the search, we didn't find anything. We did a probably two and a half mile search of just lines back and forth for the time. And I called it when we couldn't find anything. And the next morning, I guess the person that was on the boat saw the article that we're looking for information. He called in and said it was him. Saw the boat coming, and they're actually fishing in the channel. No lights, just a flashlight. Every time a boat would come by, they just shine a flashlight at them. And the boat that had actually hit them, they said was too big for them to see the flashlight. So they saw it coming and jumped off. But the boat actually circled back around, picked them up, and brought them into the dock. No injuries, luckily. Not a single injury on the 3 people that were on that boat. But I figured he was probably scared to report it because unregistered boat, no lights on it, none of that stuff, and no boating license. So I'm sure he panicked and figured if he didn't get hurt, just leave it alone. But the boat that hit him, by law had a right to report it, which he never did. We found out through cameras on different docks who it was, and he did get arrested for failure to report boating accident. But that's about it.
Well, thank you.
That's enough.
Yeah, thanks. Jeff, do you have anything that you want to weigh in on? Jeff Stedman?
Jeff Mangles or Jeff Stedman?
Stedman.
Yes, we're here.
Do you have anything that you want to weigh in on? You're next on the agenda.
Just that we need to focus our efforts on the legislative remedy that we talked about with respect to the Harbor Management Act, and to be able to uphold the authorities of the municipal harbor management commissions in response to the Superior Court decision, which the town of Greenwich is appealing, and hopefully they intend to appeal it, or they have appealed it already to the Supreme Court. But as we've talked about, since January, that decision affects the authorities of all municipal harbor management commissions. And,
Are we doing an amicus brief to support that?
Not that I'm aware of from the city of Norwalk or anyone else. We were trying to focus our attention on the legislative, not so much a change, but a clarification.
Right.
As we talked about, and this topic is brought up during the meetings of a number of other municipal harbor management commissions, all of whom are concerned about it. So, we have to figure out a strategy for introducing the legislation that we talked about, or the clarification.
Right. That'll be done in committee.
Well, we need a champion from our area, from one of our state legislators.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing, John, we continue to talk with the Connecticut Port Authority about the availability of those small harbor infrastructure projects.
Right.
And we continue to be told that there's a significant amount of money that's going to be available for these grants. So that the sooner we can, come up with a proposal that we can support with document the costs that we're asking for, I think we'll have a good chance of getting a grant when the next round is announced.
I mean, that's why we support, working with DPW on that, on the East Basin docks. I mean, that would be ideal.
As you said, John, that's ideally suited for fun. It's a municipal project. we have to assume that it'll be managed under the open to all on equal terms policy. And
Right.
it would be fundable by the Connecticut Port Authority.
And they've also mentioned, John, if you recall, that they favor the Harbor Commission being the lead entity on submitting these grants.
No, absolutely, and that's
So
what.
we've got a win-win situation here.
Right, and that's what we need to,
Well,
Make-
that information needs to be conveyed to the so-called authorities.
right, the different departments within the
Right.
city. It's in their best interest, not to their detriment, to consult with us.
Well, that's the point, and I think some egos have got to be massaged a little bit, as far as who submits this particular type of grant.
And then.
What's the time frame for submitting grant applications?
Excuse me?
What's the time frame for submitting?
But we don't know yet, Alan. But we talked with the Connecticut Port Authority representative today, who just again reinforced that they're trying to determine what the time period would be. But again, emphasize that there's a substantial amount of money and encouraging us to get ready to apply when they announce what the period will be.
Right. And those docks in the East Basin would be ideal for this type of project.
Absolutely.
Because it's not what the reason why previous applications have failed is that they were setting a proposal to investigate the possibility of submitting a proposal. And these types of proposals that just doesn't fly. They want an actual project that has to be submitted, not work in to sort of propose. This is the type of work that we propose to do.
All right, let's move forward. Steve, Harbor Commission, Shellfish Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thanks for the commission handling the Eversource so well tonight with DPW. I thought the comments were totally appropriate. I'd just like to remind everyone that Eversource did submit a demonstrably false benthic macro inverter report. I would certainly like to have representation from a biological standpoint. I certainly would encourage your commission to ask for this as well.
Steve, are you referring to the shellfish clutch in that area?
Yeah, so they basically reported, no life. And if you remember, I presented a very nice Nike swoosh shaped oyster reef right in the former path of the HDD. So, it'd be interesting to have a revision of that or just some biological commentary regarding same.
Well, in the revision of their plans, I don't think they plan to touch anywhere near the surface though, Steve, no? We hope not anyway.
Well, they said they didn't before and they had this plan. So, it would be appropriate for us to ask them about this.
All right.
Shellfish Commission also submitted an addendum to its consultation regarding 26 Shorefront Park. The recreational shellfishing is open in Norwalk and in our neighbors in Westport and Darien, and eat Norwalk shellfish. And I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think before you spoke, Chris wanted to weigh in on something.
Oh, well, we started talking about the East Basin docks and I didn't know what point we should, go through what's happening with that.
Well,
you had some discussion offline. I caught the very tail end of. I spoke to DPW on my own. And I don't know if we wanted to just download on what we know about what's happening with that RFP. Because that all came out, all that discussion, we had discussions internally, but it was all since the last meeting. So there's been nothing discussed in front of the commission about it.
Right, did you want to discuss it?
Sure, I will, so that.
All business, if you don't mind.
Sure, you tell me the right time.
Okay. Let's see, harbor and safety and moorings, Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The mooring activity is starting to slow down for this season, as you can imagine. And the committee continues to address any issues or concerns that may come up. We have 63 approved applications and 45 applications under review. The committee will receive a final payment from the Norwalk Yacht Club this week. I've been on the phone with them for a long time. trying to get them to understand that we need it in a more timely fashion. They had thought that they cut a bigger check with the first payment, which kind of triggered their way of slowing down, if you will. So I think, and they have a new mooring captain, if you will, for the area. So he's learning, and I'm doing the best I can to get them to move. And they promised me they're going to give me a list of the mooring field and a check for the balance.
I think we have to deal when we're dealing with next year's letter. That's not too far away.
Sorry, John, I didn't catch that.
I said, I think when we start dealing with the upcoming season, we deal in absolutes as far as no later than, period.
Well, I've sent directly emails to each mooring field explaining what the dates are and what we expect. Some adhere to them and others just ignore them. So
do we have a way of assessing a penalty for late payment?
Not that I know of, and I don't think there's any language to that effect either.
It's just disheartening, the fact that we didn't get applications until the end of it's the end of the season.
This is Norwalk is very slow, and the other two are pretty much on time. This one here, I'm hoping that the next year it's gonna improve. I'm gonna try to make it. Let's put it that way.
Dennis, what's the nature of the applications that are under review at this point? It doesn't.
Those are applications that do not have all the documentation. And quite frankly, I'm getting tired of telling them that they need the registration and the insurance. As long as they make the payment, they're fine. I'm not chasing these people anymore. I'm getting tired of it.
So the boats are in and their moorings are used. It's just
Not in every case, but
we don't have the paperwork necessarily.
I don't know. People just ignore what I'm trying to tell them. What's expected of them. Let's put it that way.
And then the
under harbor safety, we were not aware of any issues other than the one that the harbor master made us aware of just a few minutes ago. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Alan, finance?
Sure. We had September to date, we've had no transactions for the Harbor Commission, so we're pretty much where we were a month ago. Year to date, the only thing I'm looking at is the mooring revenue. Our total revenue last year was $23,500. So far, we're $17,000 this year. So even with Norwalk's outstanding balance, which I think I'm guessing is around $4,000, we're still down a few grand this year on moorings, which indicates we have fewer moorings in the harbor this year.
I think also a big picture, we don't have our bills like from Jeff and possibly others that are reflecting the exact picture. So Jeff, you need to get your billing up to date. Because if we need to go back to the city and to ask them for more funds, we'll have to do that.
Alan said today I could submit a bill, so I'll do that, John.
Okay. All right, anything else, Alan?
That's it. Any questions?
Plans and recommendations, Jeff?
So thank you, John. So the plans and recommendations, the fee structure was submitted to the city. That was then turned over to a Matthew Sapenza, I think, something like that, with the city for review. There was some questions that Jessica had asked me about what we're charging now and what's the difference, and some of the things where we weren't charging anything, and some like $3 a foot for moorings. So I answered her questions. That was sent to the next step, I guess. I did send out those on the subcommittee, that email I thought that maybe I would have received some information by now, but I'll have to chase her. In that fee structure, though, there is a late fee penalty for the managed fields and anybody else who doesn't pay. So
You're addressing.
yeah, maybe that'll work, but
Yep.
maybe it won't.
Well, I know we've heard this right along that they wanted to help us get this through, but I think they're not, they must have other pressing issues, and they're not working on this, to be kind to them. But I know you continue to make the effort, so I appreciate that as well. So does the commission.
Well, next year is coming quick, so.
Yep. Obviously, it's not going to happen for this year coming, for 22, which was our hope. But we'll have to really put the full court press on it in 22 and before. All right, the newsletter website, Alan?
No report.
Joe Schneiderline and John Crespo, water quality?
The last month's meeting, we were hoping to finish off getting a report out. That did not happen. We were waiting for feedback. Feedback was submitted for changes. Steve Bardish put it together, and we're going to review it for this next meeting. And this will be the line in the sand as far as getting this report out. I did get a phone call from Bill Mooney this last week over a concern over dead fish in the harbor. And when I checked USGS equipment, there was one day where the water temperature dropped 5 degrees. And that kind of a shift in water temperature can cause thermal stress on fish. And also on top of the fact that the dissolved oxygen level the night before was down to 2 parts per million is enough to present a fish kill. And when I explained that to him, he said it's very understandable. And that's where we are. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris, you want to jump in now with the topic that you wanted to speak about earlier, please?
Yeah, sure. So I don't think everybody is completely up to speed on this, so I'll just start briefly from the beginning. So the DPW has put out an RFP, request for proposal, for the reconstruction of the public docks in the East Basin. And my initial reaction had to do with the scope of it. So the scope was that they call them 2 separate public marinas. There's 2 separate docks there with 2 separate gangways of approximately 25 slips each to replace the existing. They have some information about the length of boats, 19 or 20 feet. And then there'll be jet ski docks at the North Public Marina. And about they said approximately half the total slips, the North Public Marina will be for jet skis. And the other half shall be for small boats, dinghies. So, I wasn't super familiar with this facility, but just, looking at Google Earth and taking a walk out there, there's about 44, 46 fingers out there, meaning, close to 90 slips. So that my initial reaction is, they're cutting it down to 37 boat slips and 13 jet ski slips. So why the reduction? Well, I talked to the engineer at DPW who prepared the RFP, and so this is being done for Rexon Park. It's their facility. He worked with Ken Hughes, and I made a couple of calls and left a couple of messages with Ken, but I did not get a call back from him to find out his true intent. The impression I got was that the intent is to replace in kind. And I think, when it was written that somebody went out there and they counted the number of fingers and they said, okay, there's about 50 fingers, therefore there's 50 slips. But as we know, there are 2 boats per finger, and that's certainly the way this marina is set up now. So I think that was misworded in the RFP itself. And, so they intend, part of the RFP is an investigation into the condition of it, to see what is reusable. And again, I couldn't even walk at the dock because there's gates there for good reasons. So to actually access it, there's not public access to the dock itself. There's a key controlled gate. The pilings look okay. There's a concrete main dock. Some of the fingers are pretty small. Those fingers on the backside are literally just like 2x12s with a float on the end. So it, and the gangway part through the, over the intertidal zone doesn't look in particularly good condition. So I think it's certainly a project worth undertaking, but I think they, before they get too far, they need to give proper direction to the engineering firm that wins this to really determine how many fingers they're going to do and that type of, and how they're going to configure them, et cetera. And then Jeff Stedman also pointed out when we first reviewed this, that because the whole facility is within the federal navigation area, that it's the requirement of it is to be equal access to all, which would preclude the city from having a different fee structure for residents and non-residents. Don't know if they're aware of that. Don't know if they're aware of the Connecticut Port Authority grants that we've been talking about already. So these are all things I wanted to bring up with Ken Hughes. I just have not been able to get in touch with him yet. And John, I know I just caught the very tail end of your discussion with Vanessa, so I don't know what was talked about with that.
Muted, John.
What she explained to us was that in the RFP, part of the requirement would be that whomever is hired would consult with the Harbor Management Commission. You're right, because they're giving a false description of what the RFP is for prior to knowing what the real conditions, not the condition of the docks, the conditions that were set years ago by Army Corps.
Right.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And the point I tried to stress with the DPW engineer was that because part of this RFP is to do the permitting process. So it would get to us eventually. My point to him was, if there's something that's incorrect in the scope here, you don't want to hear from a bunch of stakeholders at 90% when the application's in. You want to know these problems at the beginning and do it right the first time, and not go back to your consultant and ask them to redraw the whole thing because something, you don't have the full input. So, and I was going, what I was going to approach Ken Hughes with is that, we would be happy to put somebody forward from the Harbor Commission that could work with you as a stakeholder in the scoping part, not just as our role in the DEP, structures dredging and fill application review, which is a whole nother thing. That's just, does it comply with the Harbor Management Plan? Fine, but there's also I think it would behoove us to get more involved in city work from the beginning, not as, as just this limited role of, the consistency part. There's from what it looks like down there, that it is not fully subscribed. That facility is not full. The dinghy part along the backside of the southern one, has some dinghies there, but there's whole parts of it that don't even seem to be used. The backside, which would be, less advantageous for big boats because there's not very much water back there at low tide. This is where, this is the prime spot. People who want to keep a dinghy to access their mooring field. This is the facility that should be used. It's far for the southern anchorage, if you're rowing all the way out there, but So if there's a disconnect, if people don't have a place to put their dinghy but if there's a whole public dock that is undersubscribed, there's a disconnect here. And this is another function we could get all this information rolled together, as well as things we want to do at Cove Ave or First Street or, in East and South Norwalk.
Just, Chris, I think it's just looking around out there, it's a pretty ratty area. And if we're going to be making improvements to docks, we should have, things like an access system or something and better lighting, some trash cans with a trash pickup sort of set up down there. If you have a large boat on a mooring, you'd like to have a place to come in where you can come in. That's just for loading your boat, filling your water tank. There needs to be better water supply. All those things should be part of the overview of the project to make it a better facility, particularly if we can get grant money to support it and pay for it.
Yeah, the RFP includes light stations and water and electric power. So they, I don't know what's on there now. I don't know if there's light stanchions on that dock now. There is, at the head of the gangway, there's a key access for both the floats. So it is restricted. So I think I don't know if somebody had a mooring but not a dinghy, would they have access to that? I mean, the visitors, the main dock does have the pump out facility and water and everything else, I believe. And I don't know if there's, how much else facilities there is at the Donovan Center. But yes, and it is sort of the backside of Veterans Park. There's not a lot going on over there, but.
Yeah, I do see the police sort of usher everyone out at a certain time. So
they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that gets closed. And as you said, it is keyed entrance. So there would have to be some type of a punch pad or something so that if you are transient or something, you can get in and out of. And to answer your question about.
You had lighting, you can enhance it without too much trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the hours are for Veterans Park, period. I mean, is the park closed at dusk? Or 10, I have no idea.
It's dark usually when I see.
I think there's
when I see the cops come around.
I think it's a problem if you have a dinghy there and you want to get at it at off hours in the middle of the night. You're restricted. But I'm not positive about that.
There's no more gate. There's no more gate over by the west side.
Yeah, I get, guys. I think this is information that should be discussed. Certainly with
Sure.
DPW and the person who's putting together the actual application itself to see what the design is all about. I mean, I think it's our input that would be very important.
Well, yeah, I mean, Parks and Rec controls all of that. DPW handles the engineering work for the city. So the RFP was written by a DPW engineer based on a couple emails he'd gotten from Parks and Rec.
Well, now it becomes a point where the person who is going to be doing the actual construction gets input from the Harbor Commission as far as what needs to be in place there.
Exactly, and DPW, to their, they can do lots of things, but I don't know if any of them, almost all of us here have experience at one club or another, and whether it's Village Creek or East Norwalk or Sherman Country or virtually every semi-private public marina in town is represented here. We all probably have more experience than some of these people and know how a dock is put together and what amenities work on a dock and and all that kind of thing. So, and so I think, offering our help advice in this project, I think, I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it'd be smart to use us, but.
I think what John's meeting with them the other day, maybe now, and the conversations tonight, that they know that they have to, they should, let's put it that way, according to the harbor management plan as well, consult with us prior to putting any of these projects out there. All right, thank you, Chris, for your update.
Yeah, if I could just interject one thing. So Chris, you mentioned that it's supposed to be the same fee for residents or non-residents. Is that right? Because it's in the channel?
That's what Jeff Stedman brought to our attention, that because it's in the federal navigation project, it's meant to be what's the wording? Equal access to all?
Open to all on an equal, right, even all on an equal basis, yeah.
Open to all on an equal basis.
Yeah, well, that's not the case. So they
Yeah.
do charge a resident, non-resident, and I'll give you age. So if you're older or a senior, then it's reduced. So I'll give you that.
Right.
It's the same fee. Or
Yeah.
I mean, and a more fee. It costs more if you're a non-resident.
Right.
And
you
they do have yearly dinghy slip spots there as well that they rent
Right.
out.
Yeah. People just, end tie it and they, because they're literally just dinghies. But I mean, if you have all those slips, if you can't sell slips at $46 a foot in Norwalk in 2021, you're not trying. You're really not trying. We have the Village Creek's one of the cheapest places in town, and we charge people $120 a foot. And we don't have enough, whaler slips or 20-foot, center console slips. They're just, and we have a waiting list for all that stuff. So they're not, if they can't sell them, they're not trying. And yes,
All right, let's move on to public comment. Anyone from the public? I don't see any on the list, but if there are any,
John,
please raise your hand and we'll
John,
acknowledge.
before we proceed, do you want to discuss anything about the October 6th meeting?
Yeah.
We can, after public comment.
All right.
There is none, so let's bring that up. Everybody, I believe, is aware that there's a
John, there is I think Linnell raised her hand.
I see.
I didn't see her on the list, but if you can get her recognized, Michelle, please.
Sure. Now you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now, John?
Yes, we can. I don't know why you're not showing up on my attendee list.
I'm sorry, sir. And usually I like to listen, but I want to tell you, I attended virtually every one of those charrettes for the Norwalk zoning. And I said not once, twice, but 3 times they ought to talk to you guys. And finally, Diane let me know that there is a meeting set up, but I can tell you that I do think they'll listen. I mean, they did a pretty good job in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and just be really direct with them. I found them really open. And enough residents came forward and said what's really special is the seaside at Norwalk. And it's everything you guys do. This meeting is just one example. Thank you. I learned a lot watching, and I just wanted to say hello. Bye.
Thank you, Linnell. Anyone else? I see there's another attendee. That's not a panelist. That's Matt. Why are you just an attendee, Matt? Oh, well. All right, moving right along. Yes, let's bring that up. Everybody's aware of, I believe it's October 6th at 6 p.m. There's a triple meeting between Shellfish, Harbor, and Water Quality for us to weigh in. We had a meeting by committee with Steve Kleppen, and he agrees that we should be putting a presentation together, which Jeff is doing, and we'll dominate the front side of the meeting. And instead of us asking them questions, let them ask us questions. And we'll tell them what the history is of that area, all the areas along the water, what the zoning requirements are now, and the type of use that's there, because the people that they've been interviewing are property owners. Property owners' interest is highest and best return on their properties. And I get that as a builder, a developer, I get that. But if I buy a piece of property and it's zoned X, I have to accept that and work within those bounds on a normal basis. But if you want to now change it all so they can make a score and then we wind up with more apartments in Norwalk, I don't find that to be a positive thing. Especially it's taking people that have marine use out of the equation, that are dependent on the water. For example, on one of the pieces of property, there are 7 waterborne users, and those users all need to have access to the water, whether it's removing docks and storing them for the winter, whether it's working on boats and repairing them and then launching them to do sea trials. Those are all important things. You can't do that in Wilton by moving it out of town or to another area that would not be conducive to doing that. And we have a lot of marinas in town, boat clubs. These facilities are supporting them as well. A lot of the people that are, and we have many that are, whether moorings or yacht clubs or boat clubs or tennis facilities like Allen that has boats, or it's a boating facility that has tennis. I don't know which way you paraphrase it more, but those people need to have support systems on a local basis where they can drive their boat over, have it removed and repaired, and then put back into the water. So those are some of the things that we're going to make them aware of, that we need a continuous use of the marine zoning that's there now. So anybody else want to weigh in? I know Jeff may want to say something more along the lines of what he's putting together as his presentation to them.
John, I'd like to weigh in a little bit.
All right, Joe.
One major concern I have is they want to redevelop an area that is completely within FEMA floodplain, flood zone designated area. And I wonder what kind of higher order intelligence would intentionally build in a flood zone and hope to pull it off and keep people safe and happy for the next 30 or 40 years. We all know what's happening to the storms. We know what's happening to the sea levels. And to do this, I think, is a foolish act.
Well, obviously, the buildings will be brought up above the high tide storm cam requirements for sure, and the parking would be underneath. But I'd hate to be the insurance company that's holding those policies for those cars that are parked under these buildings. And obviously, when you put up these buildings, and there's some that are planned already, just waiting for this phenomenon to take place, at the end of the day, you know, we could all talk about, and that's where basically my mind was at one point, is do mixed use. And yet Chris at a meeting brought up to me, and it opened my eyes somewhat, that if you're in an expensive 5-story building along the water, are you going to want to also look at docks that are piled up, or tackle that's piled up, or a shop that works on boats? You know, so there's a fine line. And then what do you, so that's saying you have to displace these people. If you displace them, what happens to our marine dependent others that look for these? On one particular property, there's more than 7 marine dependent users. And they haven't even been talked to in this whole scenario. So I guess somewhat of what our conversation will be with them is to make them aware of these inequities that may arise, and development isn't all it is cracked up to be in some cases. So Pinto, did you want to weigh in? I see you on
No,
mute.
well, no, it's what they propose, and it's, again, this is a question I've had, is they're throwing a carrot in front of the property owners, and that is just changing the zoning so that it makes it easy for, let's say, having residents there. And everybody knows that it's easy. It's just, you have a bunch of apartments there, you can collect rent, and that's why they sit back and that's why they collect rent. Whereas having a functional waterfront, it takes a little bit of doing. And I think, again, as you pointed out, that Chris sort of opened basically our eyes, the fact that you need marines, you need storage of vessels, you need places to clean those vessels, you need places to store docks, in an area that is a marine industrial zone. And it's a marine industrial zone, not public housing.
Yeah, well, it's removing them and then putting them back in. You need
That's
access to
correct.
water.
So you need a working harbor, and a working harbor requires a lot of, an industrial area. It's not just simply, we're going to put condominiums or apartments in a marine industrial zone, and people are going to be comfortable with having a boatyard next to, next to their garage or their facility.
And keep in mind with Joe's remarks in terms of FEMA and CAM requirements, that means that those buildings would be elevated. They're not going to be, let's say, if we have a cap of 3 stories or 4 stories, the request may be 5 or 6 stories, which blocks the view of the harbor from many places in town that have enjoyed it all these years.
Well, like I said,
It blocks a view of all the other buildings they've just built on the other side of Water Street.
Correct.
And part of what they had to do for those, they had to raise the grade, and I can't remember which cross street it is, not Monroe, but the next one, or for an egress path, because when the floodwater comes in, I mean, Water Street floods on a lunar tide, much less a hurricane. You wouldn't be able to get an ambulance in or out of there. You wouldn't be able to get emergency vehicles in and out of those apartments unless you raised Water Street 5 feet. They raised the side street going up to Day Street in South Main through those new apartment buildings because of the flood zone. I mean,
And we may see that again tomorrow.
Yeah. And I don't think I'll be able to call in on the 6th. Unfortunately, it's my son's birthday that day, and we'll see how quickly I can get him to bed. But so if I'm not there, that's the reason.
So that's the awareness part of stuff. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in? No, if not, we'll go to the approval of the minutes.
Just to piggyback off of what Chris mentioned, we forget that there were boats on Water Street and after Sandy, not small boats. These were big freaking boats. And you've got those banging around. Sandy was not a hurricane. It was a tropical storm. And imagine a 40 or 50-foot boat slamming into whatever apartments or whatever buildings are there. This is something we have to take seriously if you are really concerned about the harbor. And, I started looking around. I have property up in Maine, and every once in a while I'll stop down at the Maine Maritime Academy, and they actually had a major in marina development. Why aren't they using these people's expertise? I mean, these are people who obviously see the pros and cons of having different marinas. And you have, if you don't want to go all the way up to Maine, you have Mass Maritime and you have New York Maritime. You have people who are concerned about the maritime industry, and they're experts, not architects that are residential architects. That concerns me.
Duly noted. We bring all this stuff up on the meeting. Anybody else want to weigh in? If not, okay, let's go to the approval of the minutes, please. As adjusted.
John, did you get I sent you a note.
Yeah, there were a couple of adjustments that I received about 5 p.m. today, so.
Did you get
they were
my, John?
minor, really.
Did you get my?
Yeah. I just didn't have a chance to put it
Okay.
together,
All right.
but they were minor, really.
Oh, spelling of names properly, just to make sure that.
Yeah, I'll make the corrections and send them out to Michelle.
All right, somebody want to make a motion, to accept the minutes as amended?
Mine was really important because it was about the vote on 26 Shorefront. So
You want,
that was not minor.
You want to restate your correction?
Right, so my correction is to add Jeff Mangel's vote on 26 Shorefront Park. The first vote, Jeff, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, voted that it was not in accordance with the harbor management plan. So that vote ended up 5-3. Right? And then the second vote was to allow the project to move forward. So instead of 4-3, it was 5-3 because Jeff's vote was in there on both of those.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So I mean, that's significant but it was still a vote one way, whatever way it went, that doesn't change it whatsoever. All right, so there was a motion made to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Dennis seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. Actually, everybody, this was a great meeting tonight. We got a lot of stuff done. We interacted with city agencies. We had a little bit of public comment. And we're heading in a positive direction. I think, we've had off-site meetings with planning and zoning. We're hopefully get a better working relationship within the city agencies to their benefit and to the benefit of the harbor in general and the citizens of the city of Norwalk and the maritime community. That's what our charge is, and that's what we need to do over time. That's our deal. So I want to thank everybody for attending the meeting, and some of you I'll see on next week at the Shellfish Commission and others at the joint triple meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor? Thank you all.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Have a good night.
One is
Good
it.
night.
Everyone.